Well, hello and welcome to the Impactus Young Man's Podcast. So glad that you're joining us today. I've got a question. Have you ever used artificial intelligence? Maybe you're thinking, no, not really. But what if you use it in more ways than you think? Things like Google Maps, AI. What about your social media feeds? AI. What about cashing a check with your phone? You're using AI. Self-driverless cars, AI. Artificial intelligence is really making a sweep across our nation and is in the news a lot. Recently, there was an article about a top Google executive known as the godfather of AI who left to share the dangers of artificial intelligence. I don't know about you, but when I see headings like that, it just causes me to pause a little bit. And so for this podcast, we discuss how should we respond to things like ChatGPT, AI? Should we be concerned? Should we welcome it? How can we use it for good? All of those questions and more on today's podcast with Andrew Wood. Let's jump right in. Well, we're back. Andrew, thanks for coming on down to the podcast studio today, man.
It's awesome to be here.
How was traffic?
It wasn't bad at all.
Did you
use Google Maps to get here?
You use Google Maps? You're not a Waze guy?
No, I'm actually an Apple Maps guy, but I couldn't find the location on Apple Maps. Yeah. I know, I'm the weird guy. Everybody thinks, how do you get anywhere with Apple Maps? I think it works most of the time though.
I've never used Apple Maps.
You have an iPhone though.
Yeah.
Huh.
What are you?
I have an iPhone.
Yeah, everyone I know uses anyway. Did you know, I didn't realize this, but on the topic today, you know, we're talking about AI, ChatGPT, and all these types of things. I didn't realize that actually artificial intelligence, we've been using it for years. I thought it was, you know, when we hear the word AI, I thought like it's something new and it's kind of like, it's clearly vogue right now. But artificial intelligence is in a ton of stuff that we use, like Google Maps and Waze.
I think it's been in everything that I've used my entire adult life when it comes to technology, right?
Yeah, Google searches, Siri, cashing a check with your phone. I just, for some reason, I had thought like AI was limited to and only like these new like ChatGPTs and like these new like, you know, when I hear artificial intelligence, maybe that's part of the issue, is that it kind of freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost like we never thought of these things as having a mind of their own, and now we're thinking of them as having a mind of their own, having intelligence.
But we've been using it for a while.
Is the difference like Google, like it has an intelligence, like it'll do what it tells you to do, but AI can decide for itself what is best to do? Is that what it, like, I don't even know really how to differentiate it.
Yeah, I know the definition of AI is computer systems that mimic human intelligence. I think it was Dr. Scott Ray that said something like that. Ultimately, it's, you know, from what I understand, and I'm just for the record, this is not like formulated opinions on this that are like, ask me next week, I may think differently on this. But from what I know of AI, using all the information that it can find on the web and also all the data that all the websites, it was funny, you know, like on websites, it says like, you know, do you accept all these cookies, right?
Right.
Well, and it typically says like yes or just or whatever. Well, recently it said they were blatant with it. They're like, are you okay if we sell your information?
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And I thought, no, don't sell my information. But a lot of the information that AI uses is from these websites and these things that I do that tell people what I'm interested in and what I do. And truthfully, you know, I think a lot of times Christians in particular, we can be really skeptical of new technology or new AI.
Yeah.
I think about like even like the year 2000, everyone thought like, you know, that
the world was going to,
all the computers were going to turn against us. And I actually remember the moment where I was standing. Do you remember in 2000 where you were standing?
I don't.
No, at the millennium, is it? Millennium?
Yeah, the turn of the millennium.
Turn of the millennium. But I remember I'm like looking to see if any lights were turning off in the community because we were outside or whatever.
Oh.
But we can be really nervous and like skeptical and like kind of paranoid about technology and those sorts of things. But truthfully, all tech, you know, as I think about how we should think about these things as Christian men, all tech can be helpful, you know, and in many ways, like the genius of God, we get to see glimpses of it in the genius of others, and we get to enjoy Google Maps. And that's like, that's not just some cool invent. That's the grace of God, actually, the common grace of God given to us through the good thing of technology.
It affords us a lot easier pathways to meet with people and connect with people and to share Jesus with people and to disciple people and care for people. Like it makes, they're all tools to be able to do that better. they have the potential to act as that.
Totally. Yeah. I think about like every good gift comes from the Father above, right? Like, and sometimes I think we think about like technology is like a human thing, whereas like, reading our Bible is a spiritual thing,
right?
Or like, blessings. We think about blessings a lot of times in regards to our circumstances and things like that. But like a good burger that I just had is a good thing from God. Now, if I eat 25 burgers, I take God's good creation, his good genius that he's given to someone else, and it becomes an ugly thing, right? Yeah. And so the same is true for tech. I think tech can be used for good things, as we had talked about. I think about like even our social media feeds. It uses AI to show us the very things that we like.
Right.
Imagine if it didn't do that. Our social media feeds would
filled with completely meaningless, annoying garbage.
Like I would have,
as if it's not already. Yeah. Because I kind of like meaningless, annoying garbage.
More meaningless. I'd see your meaningless garbage, and you would see my meaningless.
I'd have to sift through everyone's meaningless garbage just to find mine.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, there's something I like, right? And so there's good things for it. I think that's just the thing. We have to realize that these tools come with the potential for blessing or flourishing. We can use these things to actually enjoy God's good grace that he's given to other people. I think about the thing that I've read recently, that AI is being used to actually advance medical screening, and we can begin to see cancers and stuff like that in people that before. And any other ways you think AI could be used for good?
Yeah, I mean, just what I'm learning about it is like all things, it's a tool that can be used for good, but there's also like a healthy fear, because it could be like if it gains too much power or people use it for wrong. And that's the problem with these tools. Any tool, any technology is a means to like greater power, right? It's a way to make our energy more efficient so that we can do more, accomplish more. In the same amount of time. Like at the end of the day, we all have 24 hours in a day. We sleep for hopefully 8 of them, and we have 78 years to live. Maybe AI will help us live a little longer than that. Who knows? But like at the end of the day, it really is just to make our energy more efficient. So all of it is potentially good in that respect. But the danger is the power that's behind it, the power to influence.
Yeah, I mean, the dangers are I think immense. I don't say that as like kind of like someone that's like sounding the alarm, but I do think we have to be careful of that. I think about like the efficiency you said. It does make life a lot more efficient. Take this very podcast, for example. This whole time, it's not actually two humans speaking to you. It's actually a recorded voice and just AIs. I'm just kidding. We're real. We're here.
Are we though?
How do you know?
How do I know?
But what's interesting is I saw something recently, and I forget the name of it, but it will now take our podcast. We have one camera here, and you put your shot in, and it will cut your whole podcast for you in seconds.
Wow.
And you've edited a lot of podcasts.
That saves a lot of time.
Hours.
Yeah.
And so there's an element where it's like, this is amazing. It's efficient. It makes, I now have more room in my calendar to dedicate to producing more content for God's glory. Right?
Now, that's what we've always said about technology. What we tend to do with that is we just use that time to be like lazy.
Yeah, it's true.
Scroll on Instagram. That's what I'm learning about. It's the same as every new technology. Wow, this could save us some time. What are we going to do with that time? To do more good. Yeah, it's like, but I have to still, the human has to choose to still do the good. I've used it for sermon prepping in the past. Don't tell my elders, but I've used it. There's been moments I haven't used it very often because the results are, it's like taking somebody else's sermon. Like it's always not sufficient for your church. But there's been a lot of times where I'm like just feeling like a block, like writer's block. Or there's been times where I'm like, man, I just need to get a few things like contextual information about this. Instead of me going to Logos and I'm gonna search through the whole thing myself, it's just like ChatGPT telling me. It hasn't been as good as my own personal research, but it's helped quite a few times just being able to get simple things.
I'm not going to pretend like I haven't used it. In fact, I used it in a marketing meeting recently as we were trying to come up with this we were just trying to come up with a statement that was just like really concise and using certain words. And so I just tried. It didn't help us, but I've used it as well. Like I preached on Genesis 3 and sin this past Sunday at my church. And I just wrote in, what are some common misconceptions to the doctrine of sin? What are some challenges? And so what it helped me was it scanned the internet, found the many questions that people have about the Christian doctrine of sin, and now I know that those people are sitting in my audience, and I can try and answer those questions as I speak. And so, man, the utility of it is really helpful, and the efficiency part is really helpful. The danger that I'm worried about is that, you know, in an instant society that we live right now, is our main chief end goal and utility of things is not whether or not it's wise, it's whether or not it is efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it cuts cost, if it cuts corners, if it cuts time, well, not corners, but if it cuts cost and cuts time, then why wouldn't you do it?
Right.
But oftentimes there's a relational loss that happens whenever we take, you know, like for example, you know, one of the ways that I see AI being used is like when I call my bank, it's like, hey, I actually am a robot that will help you, you know, go to where you need to go. Just say what you need to say.
I hate those robots. I'm like, zero. Somebody, I need to talk to a human. Somebody, please. Hate them.
And then you get put forward to someone that's like, oh yeah, I'll put you on hold. And then you're just back to that robot guy again. But like the moment we take those people out of there, and we'll talk about job loss in a second, there's a relational loss where before you would either have to talk to a mentor about whatever topic you're talking about. You would have to read an author, right? Now there's immediately less interaction with flesh and bone. Mm-hmm. And so I just think, I don't know, I'm just a little concerned that we're not pausing just to say, yeah, this is efficient. But what's the, like, you take this story all the way to its end. What's the end? What happens? Are we just more isolated? Mm-hmm. Are we just less reliant on one another, less relational?
Well, the information we're going to get is less human. Like the information that relies on now is all based on human input. It's all based on human experiences, all based on humans who have written things. If we just stop actually doing the human part of it, because there has to be humanity in it, because AI will never be human, then we actually will lose the humanity in it. So if we just rely on it for everything, it has nothing to feed off. It's got nothing current to feed off, which it needs to. And so that's a danger on the AI end. Mm-hmm. And then for us, like, man, at the end of the day, like what I want in my life is to connect. The only reason, like the things that I research and I spend time reading on and researching and studying and paying attention to, the games that I play, all the activity that I tend to do, the money that I make, really is actually towards a particular end.
Yeah.
And that end is actually to connect with human beings. It's actually to be loved and to love, and a bot will never be able to do that. Yeah. As long as you know it's a bot. Maybe it can do that if you don't know it's a bot, but that's a little creepy. But but that's really, yeah, as long as it's an artificial intelligence and there's actually no human connection. And at the end of the day, if all my human endeavors are for that primary purpose to feel actually connected with God and connected with other people, then I will lose, like, it'll lose my soul. I'll lose myself. I'll lose my deepest longings, right? It will never go fulfilled. Information doesn't do that. Information is a means to that. And
that's all it is. There is no, yes, humans put these codes and these programs into place, but there's no human behind the sentences in this, like, immediately. And so you are not interacting with someone that actually has a will or a soul, for that matter. And I just think about how the Lord designed us for needing one another. I think about the body, right? And how, like, one's a hand, one's a foot, and all these types of things. Right. It's when you rely heavily on AI technology, in some ways, you are kind of dismembering the body a little bit, in the sense that, like, where I would go to a book written by another fellow Christian or brother or sister or whatever, now I'm relying on a technology's interpretation of someone else, and so there's a break in that relationship.
Or the other thing you get is actually its interpretation of all the parts together. So you're interacting with this thing that is actually representative of all this diversity of views and people and perspectives and experiences. It's giving you this simple answer and responses of one person saying that, but one person doesn't say that because one person doesn't experience that. It's the collection of a human consciousness that leads to that thing. And the human experience is actually connecting with the humans behind that and seeing the beauty and the diversity of the experiences that go into that. Whereas the AI technology, all it's going to be able to do is summarize all that and hand it to you as though it's...
That's been my experience. I wonder if that's why our generation loves it. It's because we're in a postmodern society where we are kind of resistant to someone saying this is the way it's done. Yeah. And the one thing that I actually do appreciate, the one thing I do appreciate about using ChatGPT is it will give you an answer and then give you a caution. Right? Like, it'll say, here it is, but be mindful of this. And I do appreciate that sometimes, because I think sometimes we just say, this is the way it is. And we don't take a moment to go, well, what's the other side of it? Now, in regards to the dangers of AI and ChatGPT and all these types of things, I thought it would be interesting for us to actually ask ChatGPT questions about itself.
Can we trust that it's...
Yeah, would it tell us that it's, dangerous? And so I asked, what are some of the main concerns that we as men should have about you, ChatGPT? And here are some of the answers that it gave. It said this: while AI has many, like I mentioned, it kind of tells you it prefaces it nice and well. While AI has many potential benefits, there are also valid concerns about its impact on society. Here are some of the reasons why people should be concerned about AI, from AI. First is job displacement. It says this: as AI technology advances, it has the potential to automate many jobs and displace workers in various industries. Do I have to, just as I'm reading this, if I were to use that sentence, do I have to cite AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's ask AI.
That's a great question. I can pull it up here, actually. But job displacement. Where can you see this happening in regards to jobs actually possibly being removed or taken?
Man, copy. Somebody the other day that I was working with on something, I was like, hey, can you develop a business plan for that? And they said yes. And then they sent me something pretty quickly, and it was like, wow, that's amazing. You're amazing. And they're like, oh no, I just put it into
really?
to ChatGPT. And I was like, man. Oh, so we don't need people to write copy anymore. And there's a lot of administrative tasks that we aren't going to necessarily need. Here's a question for me. As a pastor, I'm like, if my primary role of a pastor is to preach sermons that are just content, then at what point is it hey, they're going to create a better sermon than I'm able to write? Am I redundant if that's my role as a pastor? Yeah, I've actually thought about that, and I've wondered.
Yeah, I can't see. I can't see AI. There's talk is AI going to take over the world? Is it going to learn to kill humans or whatever and eradicate us? I just can't see that happening. I think a matter just you just unplug.
Yeah, you push a button, right?
Push a button. I'd like to think that. But one of the more common ones people are talking about is, we might reference it earlier, was just receptionists, right? The guy that every time you call a bank now, you don't get a human. In right now the CRA in Canada, which is kind of like our IRS?
Sure.
It's basically our income.
Yes, it is, I think, actually.
Tax.
We know so much.
Man, I am looking pitiful. But the CRA is the Canada Revenue Agency. It's where we apply to get our income tax and those types of things. They deal with a ton of, unemployment and all that type of stuff. But I'm thinking man, every time I talk to CRA, they are just asking me questions off a page. It's what is this? How much did you make last year? How much did your business make this? And so I'm thinking, man, is that type of a role going to be disappearing? But receptionists, your banks, I think as well, a lot of people are talking about shipping industry.
Yeah.
Self-driving cars.
Self-driving boats.
Yeah.
Self-flying planes.
That one seems a little risky. Yeah. Although, it's funny. I'm pretty sure some planes actually have the ability to kind of let using GPS and stuff like that land themselves. But that's but also there's one that I want to touch on is artists. Mm-hmm. And artists have had a unique place in history. Yeah. You think of architecture. You think about all the paintings on cathedrals, not in Canada because our church buildings are kind of lame compared to.
Think of poetry and songwriting. Yeah.
Well, I just saw that there was a person on Spotify that would release new songs from musical artists, but it wasn't from the musical artist. So you're hearing a new song from Drake, that sounds exactly like Drake, and people were loving it and they were adding it to their playlist. But this was just some guy that made it, who knows, in his studio, but it sounded just like Drake. And so what implications does this have on artists and its artist role in the church? Artist role
depends on what we see. What's art, right? It actually asks us the questions on the fundamental questions on what's art. If art is actually a human expression, then it can't replace that. Mm-hmm. It can create things based on, like I said, kind of the collective consciousness based on all the content available to it, but it can't actually express the individual unique human experience in a place, in a time with a life or a history, right? And so if we see art as that, then it can't replace that. But if we just see art as things that look nice or things that sound nice or perfect music that has the perfect beat and mix of harmonies, and if it's more of formulaic, a scientific thing, or if it's some, then it can replace that because it can do that better. It knows better than at least most of the individuals. And so, I think it's going to make us start to see art quite differently and appreciate art, not just as the perfectly fine-tuned. You sent me some stuff that you said was AI, and I was like, how in the world is that? how does that happen? I don't understand. But when I realize like there's not an individual behind this, there's individuals, but there's not an individual, then it's hard for me to even know like what's it trying to say.
Yeah, which is
what is the experience that this is birthed from? What are this individual longing? I can't connect with it until I actually connect with the person behind it as a human.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is much like NFTs. You could buy one and it was the only one and you could somehow own this thing. I think handmade art in the future will skyrocket in price because we are going to have counterfeits everywhere. And, you know, I don't want to say counterfeits, but you're going to have computer generated art everywhere. And so to have a painted lobby is going to be premium dollar because everyone else is doing the cheaper option. And so I think that's what we're going to, I actually wrote into Chat Midjourney, it's called. I just wrote in this. I wrote in men's issues, and I'll actually put it on the video for people to see.
It's cool.
And they came up with these 4 photos, and these are quite incredible. I just wrote the word men's issues, and you see a guy sitting in a chair, and his world's kind of all topped upside down. There's books everywhere, and you see a guy standing and looking in front of similar to, what's that show?
I have no idea.
Remember that show with a big portal? Anyway, something like that.
Portal. Let's call it Portal.
I think you're right. Now, I know one thing that we're seeing as well is that, like with artists, you're seeing AI copy like the genre, and so you're seeing people that have created their own unique look, and now thousands of images are online of their look. And so it's like, can you charge ChatGPT with plagiarism? I'm not sure, but I just think the role of the artist in Christian community, especially, like they've kind of lost their role a little bit, like, and so to see this happen now, it's like, oh man, I wanted to see more Christian art in the marketplace, and so that would be awesome. That's the first. Job displacement. We kind of stayed there a little long, but the second is bias and discrimination. That we have to be concerned. This is what it says: AI algorithms can perpetuate biases and discrimination if they are trained on biased data or programmed without considering ethical implications. And so the people that are programming these things have bias.
Yeah, the assumption is that the human has a bias, but the technology is unbiased, it's impartial. But that's not true.
Not true.
No.
And you know, you think about the moral dilemmas that AI can get itself into because it's just math. You think about like, I'm thinking about like self-driving cars. If it's driving down the road and a single child pulls out into the road, does it make a decision to save the driver or save the child? Can it quickly think that the child is young and has more life, so that the driver should? And should we be trusting our technology to make
those moral decisions?
And so that's a concern as well. And just also the answers that it gives when asked is depending on who was on the beginning side of this programming, you know, were they conservative or were they more liberal or were they, you know, Christian or were they Muslim? We are going to get a flavor of a certain answer just because this is not a unique human. This is a collection of many, but there are humans behind it.
It's making interpretive decisions based on all the content, based on all the data, and it's offering you one potentially true or potentially accurate perspective based on its analysis, but again, that's determined by the partiality, the bias that is embedded.
And it's just not fully reliable. And so, for example, I asked ChatGPT about a friend of mine, and I said, "Who is this person?" And for right now, ChatGPT, as far as I know, at the time of this recording, only has 2 years previous experience, or 2 years ago, so it's not updated. And they said, "This is who so and so is," and I said, "Do they have a podcast?" Which they do, and they said, "Yes, he has this podcast," and he labeled off this podcast on the website to find it, and it was just all nonsense. And so then I thought, okay, it's not only can it be biased and discriminatory, it's also just plainly incorrect. The third thing that AI said we should, you know, possibly be concerned about is privacy and security. It says AI can be used to gather and analyze vast amounts of personal data, raising concerns about privacy and security breaches. Any thoughts about that?
I mean, I don't know. I'm more worried about this now than ever. I don't know if it's as you age. I remember when I was young, I was like, I got nothing to hide. Why am I worried about privacy and security? And the older I get, the more I realize, oh, there's actually whether or not I've done anything wrong. And that can have a very negative impact on me, my family, and my community. So, yeah.
Yeah, the thing, just to jump in there, the thing that really concerns me is, selling of our information. I think that's been happening for years probably. And I'm not saying I know that. I'm not trying to like, this will probably get clipped and be like, man says that our information's been clipped for years or, sold for years. But it feels like it has been.
Why wouldn't it have been?
I know.
If it is now.
Yeah. What's that? There's that one documentary about, I think it was Facebook or something that just said like, if you are paying for something for free, then we are being the things that are sold, right?
Right, yeah.
And I thought, that's an interesting thought. I probably butchered that quote, but what I saw recently that really worried me is someone had used Zelensky's video. It looked like Zelensky. It sounded like Zelensky to do Zoom calls with big, powerful politicians in the world and recorded the calls to have, what was kind of private information out to the world. And these people were speaking to, right, Zelensky, as if they were speaking to Zelensky because they thought they were. That to me is like a huge timeout. Okay, when AI can be used to sneakily and deceptively impersonate like a politician, or myself,
or you've spoken enough on the internet, like it could literally take you and make you say whatever, and most people would have no idea.
Exactly.
The only person to verify whether it was you or not would be you.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to have to hold up like daily newspapers in all of our podcasts from now on just to prove that we said this on this day. But, I recently heard that there's like scams going around where people were taking the voice of Andrew Wood, because there's sermons of you online, calling your grandmother and saying, I'm stuck in prison, I need help, and it sounds like you.
Right.
That, when it comes to privacy and security, really freaks me out. And as well as like this idea of deep fakes. Did you see the photo going around of the Pope in a big white puffer?
Yeah. And I thought, he's the coolest Pope ever. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that made me laugh a lot. I saw this photo of a Pope with this Toronto man's big white puffer jacket, and then it came out that this viral image that went everywhere actually wasn't real at all.
Right.
That's worrisome.
It is worrisome because it's going to lead us to believe things that aren't true. And the best place for us to be as Christians is in accordance with reality. That's one of the things that, sometimes you find some Christian circles that wrestle with reality. I think the best place to be is the place that's the most real, right? And that's where God is, right? If God is the most real, then we need to be the people who are living in reality, whether or not it's practical, whether or not it's pragmatic, whether or not it benefits us financially. None of that matters. The place where we meet God or where God meets us is in the most real. And the fear of it is the deception, is the unreality or the virtual reality or the non-reality that can be created and lead us to think things and believe things that are outside of what's true and real, and not having any way to verify that or test that, right?
Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be an opportunity for the local church to actually speak from the outsides in the periphery of culture as people who are real. I wonder if in the future, if the church will be the space where we don't adopt some of these ways that are less human,
right? And
we actually do relationship face to face again. I wonder if that's one of the edges or one of the unique, distinguishing factors of our community, our Christian community, is that actually we lean into real relationships.
I think absolutely it will be. I've thought, we live in a town called Milton. There's online databases where people say stuff, and I've thought, wow, the best thing that we could do is actually invite all these people who are willing to say stuff here and put them in the same room and say that here in front of human faces, and that might be the best thing that we can offer our community is be those who are courageous enough to go, let's be embodied in a place and say and speak and talk and look and listen. And I think we're going to lead the future in that, as everything else seems to be pulling away from that.
Yeah, just lean into actual real life relationships. The next one I don't know anything about. I'll let you take the expert on this one.
That's if I know.
This is from AI about AI. Okay, so just listen. This is not us. It's from AI about AI. Autonomous weapons. AI technology can be used to develop autonomous weapons, which could pose a significant threat to global security.
That's freaky.
Autonomous. Are they talking about like I have autonomy and self-decision, self-will?
Yeah.
Self-willed weapons?
I
don't know. I have no idea.
We joked earlier about just unplug it. It's what if they started creating technology that, it couldn't just be unplugged in one place, but it has 1,000 places where it needs to be unplugged. You know what I mean? And then it could do as it pleases, right?
Actually, I just asked ChatGPT what autonomous weapons are, and this is what they say. Autonomous weapons are also known as killer robots.
So it's like iRobot, Will Smith. This was 20 years ago, wasn't it?
And there are weapon systems that I can identify, target, and engage targets without human intervention.
I think we need to stop there.
Yeah, let's just stop talking about AI. We may not make it out of this room. Our computer might just blow up.
Yeah, you should smash your computer. Let's smash our iPad right now. That's what's done. Run.
But, we're laughing. But this is what AI is saying we should be concerned about. But they're pulling that from other places that talk about AI. Dependence on technology, man. I think, we've kind of touched on this a little bit. Just like, how much are we getting away from our created order of needing one another? I think about in Genesis 1 where it says it was not good for Adam to be alone. And so God gave a helper, a wife. What are we just trying to get back to Adams without helpers and without community and without, the Christian walk? Is the danger of just relying on technology way too much and isolating ourselves?
The question is, it goes back to what is the primary end of the human life? Like, what is the fulfilled life? What is the meaningful life? What is the one thing that matters to us? What's the one thing that that we're made for, right? Yeah. What is the kingdom of God? What is life and life to the full? And is life and life to the full pleasurable experiences that technology can produce? Is life and life to the full knowing as much as you possibly can in your 80 years? Is life and life to the full some sort of like created intelligence that's based on you and your personality that can live forever after you die? Is life and life, like, what is life and life to the full? And we really do have to start asking that question and answering that question. And we as Christians, we believe that Jesus promised that. We believe that the scripture testifies to that and teaches about it and shares not just a picture of what the kingdom of God is, but the means to that. And so we as Christians have a path to follow towards life and life to the full. But if we're not clear on that and we're not focused on that and we don't set our minds on that, we don't prioritize that, then we very easily can be taken in so many directions and so many different offers and promises of what life and life to the full could be that is set apart from the life that Jesus promises and offers. So
totally. And just the encouragement of scripture is I think AI sounds like we're trying to make our life easier. And sometimes it's not a bad thing to lean into the fruit that comes through difficult circumstance. And so if we can just AI ourselves free of effort or challenge, what will that do for the human spirit?
Right.
Like, will we flourish to the life and life in the full? But like you said, life and life to the full might not be just convenience.
Right.
And so that's just, I think you nailed it there, is just let's not depend on the technology that way. The last thing I think is really telling about AI is our own ethical concerns. The quote here is, there are ethical considerations related to the development and deployment of AI, including issues such as ownership of data and the use of AI in criminal justice and the impact on society and the environment. There's no doubt that there is a separation between the rich and the poor everywhere. But on a global scale, I feel like AI is really, especially ChatGPT and all these types of things, is going to make that separation a little bit greater because we have computers that can go to ChatGPT. What about the people that don't?
Right.
And so is the gap growing greater? As well, like what happens if we take our judicial system and we just reduce it down to AI?
Yeah.
Is that actually, then we just have a robot just just yes and no's? Is that what we want? More of a but I saw recently that there's law firms now that are using AI to fight in court.
Right.
And there's other law firms that are using it. And so for the first time ever, I just read, I think it's a guy that owns a company called Do Not Pay, which is a really interesting company. Have you heard about that?
No.
Do Not Pay. He uses AI to help people fight like small like fines and bills and stuff like this. He actually gave AI the complete control of his finances.
Wow.
Let's see if I have his name. I think his name is Joshua Browder. And he gave AI all of his banking statements and said, find ways to save me money. And it found I think it was over $200 of ways to save money. But he said, can you find a refund that I can apply for? And the AI responded back, I see that you use, Wi-Fi on this United Airlines. Did it work? And Joshua wrote, not really. And immediately crafted a letter and he sent it. I'm not kidding you.
Everyone's checked out. They're already on there going like, how can I get some more money here?
Yeah. And so he sent this to United Airlines. In 48 hours, he had a refund.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so this guy, I think it's this guy, for the first time ever had his AI lawyer fighting against another AI lawyer.
Wow.
what happens then?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's some concerns that I have, that like just around the judicial system and just oppressed people, and like, will grace be completely removed from the equation in, judges? And maybe there's not meant to be grace in judges, but some thoughts around the ethical
Yeah, there
stuff.
kind of has to be. Like, that's because like what it could do is it could say, here, this is the precedent, right? And it could distill that for us very easily and quickly. Here's what the law says. Here's what the Constitution says. Here's whatever your order is, whatever, where you are. But it cannot make the decisions on whether or not it should be that. It cannot make decisions on whether or not that should be broken in this circumstance, or that should be, you should be lenient here and strict here. It can't make those moral decisions. It can only make decisions based on the content and the information, the history that it's been given. And the only way to make decisions of grace and of mercy are to be human. Because and to balancing grace and justice, mercy and justice, like truth and love, that is not something that any one particular thing can do. That's only something that a human can do with the power of the Holy Spirit and being led and guided by the wisdom of the Spirit of God in every unique individual circumstance, right? And so it's a huge ethical concern in that respect, because ethics boil down to truth and goodness and love, and those are just things that are strictly human and can only be human, right?
And that's where, like, in regards to the dangers or the concerns about AI, I think it was Dr. John Wyatt who said this. He just said, I'm not, and I'm summarizing and probably not fully accurately, but he talked about how, like, we know that Satan, the devil, is not creative. He's just a mimicker. He just is. He's not able to truly create. And so I think that just knowing within Scripture that that's his nature. I'm not saying that I think AI is from the devil, mark of the beast. I'm not saying that we should run from these things. I just think we should be mindful that one of the markers of the adversary of God is just to mimic,
right?
And that being the very nature, we should lean into things that are truly beautiful, truly creative, truly wonderful, and use these tools the best way we can to honor God. And so any thoughts around some good practice around these things? Or, Andrew, as we talked about this, like, what would you say to a guy to saying, hey, I see these things popping up, these tools. I know there's tools that I'm going to use in my daily work, but what would you say is just some general wisdom around navigating this topic conversation and using these tools?
Yeah, I would say in all things, we need to go in with eyes wide open. I don't think we stick our head in the sand. I don't think we ignore it. I don't think we become alarmists and just condemn stuff that we're not aware of, that we don't understand, that we've never used, that we've never seen. I think we need to go in with eyes wide open, and see things for what they are. Get to know, understand, even try, even use. But I would caution any young man, and this is in all things. One, do all things with balance.
Yeah.
And two, err on the side of humanity, err on the side of community, err on the side of wisdom over intelligence or wisdom over knowledge, err on the side of a human embodied experience over technology and over a virtual world. I'd say that to every young man, old man. I'd say that to every church. Like, we need to be the people who are going to err on the side of the human experience, err on the side of people, because that's who we're called to be fishers of. We're called to be fishers of men, and that's those people who are in a body, not just consciousness or ideas or
faceless,
parts of people that live in a virtual world kind of thing.
Yeah, I just think about that whole difference between knowledge and wisdom. Like, knowledge will tell you that if you drive 200 kilometers an hour, you will get to your destination faster.
Right.
Wisdom says you probably won't get there alive.
Right.
And so I think with all technology, like a car, it's useful, but within the right parameters. And so that whole idea of not being an alarmist and just being like, run, the other opposite. It's just like, I'm not going to pay attention to this. This is just going to be a fad. I don't think AI is going to be a fad. No. I think this is, as long as there's money in it to be made by big corporations and big tech, then it is going to be prevalent. And tech, social media is made to be as profitable as possible. They're not made to make our lives to flourish as much as possible.
No, it all exists. Yeah. It is something that if there's money to be made there, it's going to keep getting pushed on you. It's not something that you can hide from. It's not something you can run away from. It is something that you can practice discipline with, have rhythms and routines and structure around, but it's not something that you can ignore its existence or pretend like it's not something you're going to have to engage with. Because if you do, well, your kids are going to, or their kids are going to. But the same is true with our phones, right? Now, like today, we were the first adapters of smartphones. We were the first guinea pigs as teenagers with smartphones. And now as parents, we're not all in on the smartphone thing, right? Like we are very much like, okay, there was utility, there was benefit to this, but we're fighting against it. We're a lot more against, our generation is a lot more against it than even the generation in the past because of the negative experiences that we've had.
Unfortunately, it often comes at the cost of a generation. It comes at us being addicted to our phones. For now, you're seeing teenagers, I saw in the States, there's I forget the name of it, but a movement of teenagers that are just reverting back to the flip phone. My thought is that, by the time our kids get our age, they'll be talking about, there'll be much more limits. It's kind of like, remember when smoking would have cigarette packs would talk about the health benefits of smoking?
Right.
Now they show you cancer on the on the package of smoking. So there are some wisdom. There is some wisdom in there to just say, hey, pause, be careful what you swallow whole. I think about the fact that Jeffrey Hinton, who was known as the godfather of AI, left Google to warn people about its dangers. That's a heading of a news article enough for me to just go time out. I think in the workplace, I think there's personally, I just think there's something about being true to your employer. Your employer is not paying you to have, maybe they are, but in some instances, are they paying you to write, or are they paying you to robot to write your stuff for you? So there's like an integrity piece there about your workflow. And lastly, just as parents, because a lot of our men are parents that listen to this, just know what your kids are onto. Don't put your head in the sand. Do some reading about this, and I think that that'll help you and your sons and your daughters come closer. You're not some dad that just doesn't understand how to send an email.
Right.
So
I don't know how to send an email.
I still am trying to figure it out. No. Anyway, guys, I hope that was an enjoyable podcast for you. We really appreciate you tuning in, and hope to see you again next month.